This is Professor Dareth Seitz. This Java tutorial focuses on random numbers. We'll be using two different classes to generate random numbers that are in the Java class library, the random class and the math class. Random has a next int and a next double. It has other functions as well, but we'll show how to get an integer and a double random number. Next int takes a parameter, an upper bound, and it will return a random number between 0 and the upper bound, but it'll be 0 relative. It will include 0 but be strictly less than the upper bound. Next double does not take any parameter, and it returns in the unit interval between 0 and 1, again is not including the upper bound, a 0 relative kind of a interval concept. The math class has a function which is a static function called random. You just use the name of the class, you don't need an object, and it returns a result in the same exact range as next double. We have import statements for random and scanner. Our class name for our example is random numbers. Here's the main method, of course, is static. First we instantiate an object called random of the random class and a scanner tied to system in. We're going to get input from the user because we'll be looping this program without having to re-execute it every time, and the user will tell us when they're finished. We have local variables here. Digit 1, 2, and 3 are ints, and random number is an int. A while loop that encloses our entire main body of our program with a true condition, so it will just keep looping and looping until code within it, as requested by the user, breaks out of it. First, we will generate 3 random numbers between 0 and 9 simply using next int with an upper bound of 10. We print out a message saying that, and then we concatenate those 3 numbers together with a vertical bar between them. Next, we generate a random number between 1 and 100. To do this, we do next int 100. That gives us a 0 relative range between 0 and 99, and then add 1 to that to move it up between 1 and 100. And we print that result out. Next, between 500 and 1000, and this time we're going to use a function that we have within our class called generate random number 1, and it makes it easier. We don't have to think about the 0 relative. This time it'll be inclusive, between 500 and 1000 inclusive, and that's the way the function works, and it's no longer we have to think about it. We do it one time down that function, write the logic, and then use it. We have another function, random number 2, generate, and it works the same way. It's inclusive, and this time we're asking between 1725 and 1750. We'll look at those two functions shortly. Next, we generate 3 random numbers between 0 and 1. These are going to be doubles with decimal points. For 2 of them we use math random, the first 2, and the third one we use the random next double. And we concatenate them together with vertical bar separators. Finally, we ask the user if they want to continue. They just hit enter to continue to run it again, and it will get new random numbers. Or they can quit by entering quit. If they enter quit, we get the response, and if it's quit, call system.exit that exits the program. If they don't quit, we print out a horizontal line to separate one execution of the loop from the next. Here are our two random number generator functions. The first one makes use of the random class, the second one makes use of the math class. To get our begin and range inclusive, first we instantiate a local random number object here called random. And notice that both these functions have to be static, because in our example main is static, and static functions can only call other functions in the same class if they're static themselves. To get between begin and end, let's suppose for an example it was 1 and 10. We take n minus begin, so that would be 10 minus 1 is 9, and then we add 1 to that to get 10, and call next int with that, and that would give us between 0 and 9, and then we add begin, which say was 1, and we'd get between 1 and 10. It's clear that you wouldn't want to have to think about that every time you generated a random number. That's the purpose of having functions that do things for you. And down here we use the math class. Math, remember, the random function there generates a double in the unit interval between 0 and 1, 0 relative, not including the 1, but everything up to it. So here what needs to be done is you have to take, let's take begin and end again as 1 and 10 for an example. So 10 minus 1 is 9, plus 1 is 10. We multiply that by the number that's between 0 but not quite 1, and when you multiply that fractional decimal by 10, it now moves it up to be between 0 and 9 point whatever, something very close to 10 but less than 10. We cast that explicitly to an integer which truncates the 9 point to just a 9. So we end up with between 0 and 9. Add the begin, in our example 1, and then we get 1 to 10. And that's even more complicated to have to think about every time. So either one of these functions will do the job, and once we get our number, we return it as the return value of the function. Now we'll run this application. First, we see the three random numbers between 0 and 9 inclusive, 4, 6, and 4. A random number between 1 and 100, 9. Between 500 and 1000, 643. Between 1725 and 1750, 1739. And then three random numbers in the unit interval, and with the default formatting showing quite a number of fractional digits. We'll just hit enter to run it again, and we get another grouping here. Here we actually got a 9 in our 0 to 9 range up there. Run it again, and now we'll quit it by typing in quit. Hit enter. It says press any key to continue. We'll go back to our program now. So we've seen that we can use the facilities of the Java class library to get random numbers and then write functions to make it more convenient to get them in particular ways that we want to use them in our programs.